Thank you so much for joining me tonight for this evening's Taking Questions. My guest tonight is Dr. Shannon Connery, who is an expert in happiness. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a subject I'm really passionate about.
Well, tell me, how did you get into the field of happiness? And what exactly is happiness?
Oh my gosh, I love that you start with what it is. That's a great question right now. There's this movement to study happiness, and yet I think a lot of people in the world right now feel like, how can you possibly be happy? So the analogy I like to tell people is that when I help people create happiness in their lives, what I'm talking about really is climate. So when you think of positive feeling states like hope, contentment, calm, happy, joy, all of those are sort of under this rubric of happy feeling states that you want to have as kind of your fallback, where you wake up in the morning and that's where you start your day. And then I think of feelings as weather, because of course we're all going to have grief, we're all going to have sadness, we're all going to have conflict and stress at work. So I'm definitely not saying that everyone needs to walk around all day with a smile on their face, but I am talking about living in a way that promotes that underlying sense of well-being and empowerment.
Right. And you talk about waking up in the morning. It's a choice. It's an active choice, I think, that you have to make every morning when you wake up and say, I'm going to choose to be happy.
I do think you're right that happiness is both a choice and it does take a lot of work. And the reason, it's a funny question about how I got into this field, because I've been a psychologist for a long time. And in the first part of my career, I really studied trauma, and I worked getting people out of bad spaces into normal spaces. And then I had sort of the bottom fall out of my own life, as so many, women and people go through. I was married and had 2 kids. And one time I'm at Disneyland. It's supposed to be the happiest place on earth. And I have my 8-year-old and 11-year-old. And my husband literally said to me, as we're supposed to be leaving for the park, I can't go to the park with you. I have to go surrender my medical license. By the way, I've spent all of our money. It had sort of relapsed into opiate addiction. He'd spent all our money. There was no money. He couldn't work. He was going to rehab, and bye. So I had 2 kids, no money. I sold everything. I started working all the time. Thank goodness I started going back to work, that my kids were in school. And the funny part was, I was sitting on my couch in this dilapidated piece of, look, the place, it was a roof over our head. I'm so grateful for it, but it was not great. And I was sitting in my living room. My kids are running around playing on this old house roof. I'm reading Twilight or something, and the sun's coming in the window. And I had this moment where I went, oh my God, I'm so happy. And I really stopped, because think about the messaging that women receive in our lives about all the messages that come from TV and magazines. We're supposed to have more. We're supposed to be married. We're supposed to have a beautiful house. We're supposed to have a great career or kids and stay home with them. We're supposed to look a certain way. And here I was sitting. I'd lost all that stuff. I was divorced. I was working so much. I was really tired, and I was really happy. And I just thought, oh my God, you got to pay attention to this. You need to study what is really going on, and how do we actually intentionally create real happiness, not just what we're being sold. And so I started to look into the literature, and it really came down. I have several kind of pieces that I try to work into creating a life of kind of intention, happiness, and empowerment. But the first piece was, and I kind of created a little acronym I call PACE that I use with my clients, just to make it really easy to analyze your own life. And the 4 things that kept coming up in all the literature were pleasure. That's what the P stands for. Accomplishment, connection, and exercise, or just any sort of movement. And so each one of us has different needs. Like you and I, you might be an introvert, I might be an extrovert. We have different needs. You might want to be a career woman, but we all have to find the optimal level of these areas for us. And pleasure is funny because pleasure is one of those things that I can convince people to really pay attention to happiness and pace when I talk about the fact that, yes, we're a species. And why do we all enjoy a sunset? Like evolutionarily, why would we love to watch something beautiful? It makes no sense, except that we are literally wired as a species to enjoy things like creativity, physical touch, seeing beauty, being in nature, all of that sort of an area that doesn't get cultivated enough for women in our culture. Accomplishment is another thing. Women have way too much of it, or a ton of it that's not very meaningful. We tend to be corporate women trying to have families and running around trying to do 30 things, and we can only do 10 well. Or we're like home with 2 little kids and we're never stopping, but we don't feel that satisfied. So accomplishment is something I really work with my clients to find sort of that optimal level where if you're working really hard, is it for a payoff, and is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Or if it's not, if it's never ending, do we need to make some changes? Right. Connection, obviously everyone knows we need a support system. That's not really where I go to with happiness. It's much more of being aware of your feeling state when you're with the people in your lives. And so do you cultivate and spend time with the people who inspire you and energize you and give you new ideas and support whatever you're doing, not those people who you think, oh gosh, when I leave the room, what are they going to say? Right. So when I had my disaster, I'll tell you the best thing about it is it was so scandalous. I mean, my husband made CNN national news because he was a very prominent surgeon, and the news broke in a very, but it was such a scandal that people dropped off. So I had this huge friend group that became very small. And so it was really easy for me to go like, oh, these are the people who are my real.
It's quality over quantity, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then realizing how to get rid of relationships that don't serve you, but that you feel obligated to, like that's, and then movement. Look, there is nothing on planet Earth with more research that happiness, and not just happiness, but getting out of depression, you have to move your body. Like this sitting on Zoom all day is so counter to what we're supposed to be doing, that I literally make some of my clients like have jump ropes and music and spend 2 minutes an hour just moving, to create that space of getting your heart rate up and getting those good chemicals. But anyway, so that was how I started it. It started from disaster, and it ended with like this wonderful passion for helping other women, live better lives.
Right. What a great journey. And I think for a lot of women at this stage in their life, they're having seismic changes. If you've had children, your children are now going to college. Sally is now an empty nester. My first son went to college and then got mono his first week of school. So things don't always go according to plan, but you pivot. But you go through this time, and we talk about this a lot at Womaness, where we're at this stage in our life too, where our careers have changed or can have changed. And we look at our life and we go, okay, what has meaning? And who do we want to surround ourselves with? Who are those quality people versus the quantity people? And hopefully in your work life, you're able to find that. And then certainly the exercise, that part of it, you got to move. There are so many studies that are done about exercise and that direct correlation to happiness, even if it is just walking with a best girlfriend every night and trying to take those 10,000 steps. And what the hell, sometimes we get ice cream at the end of those 10,000 steps.
I love
that. At least we're out moving.
There's the pleasure. And I will say that I combine, if you're a busy woman, I try to find activities that combine all 4 areas of pace. And so like I do tennis, I have a group of women I hike with, I do all of those. So I get movement, I get connection. We're thinking and talking about things. And so those, if you're a busy person, combine the areas, those, you will have so much more happiness from doing an event, like you said, 10,000 steps with a girlfriend where you're talking on the way to ice cream than going to a gym and sitting on a machine and just cranking out the calories. So
right.
I
and
agree.
I think it's important to not compare yourself to other people.
That's right.
You know, we are all at different stages. You know, people are happily married, people are happily divorced, people are going through difficult divorce. You have all these changes, your career. You cannot compare yourself to other people, and you cannot define what makes other people happy. That you cannot define that that's going to make you happy, right? I mean, you were talking about reading Twilight. Well, okay.
I know, like a guilty pleasure. I can't even believe I admitted it, but it was so fun. I just realized like I'm letting myself do exactly what I want on this Sunday.
Exactly.
It felt great.
And some of us would, prefer 50 Shades of Grey. So
not saying I didn't do that too.
So let's talk about the fall, the upcoming fall. September is really the new year. You know, we hear it a lot now in the media about September being that general reset, right? It's the fall. It's when women are generally resetting. What kind of activities do you recommend for women in the fall?
So I love that question. And I loved when I read that Womaness feels like that, because that's always been, I think, for women, the new year. Like January's in the middle of a break, it's snowy, it's going to be winter longer, like the holidays are done. Like what feels great about January 1? Whereas in the fall, there's just, the days are getting, it really is a change. And so what I love about being in my 50s is that every year I really add intention. And so an activity I'm going to suggest combines a lot of things that I think bring joy and clarity and intention to people's lives, and women in particular. So one of the, I think, hard things about being a woman that I was just mentioning is that we're expected to do more than we sort of can. And we all expect it of ourselves. And so one of the things, I worked with a coach named Dan Blank. I want to give him credit. And he noticed that I was doing that. He said, I think you try to do 30 things and you end up doing them half-assed.
Right.
I want you to do this exercise and you're going to be amazed at how it changes your life. And so you take a pile of index cards, like we used to put our Spanish words on, or our French words. And you do what's called a brain dump. And you literally write down everything you have to do in a week and everything that you want to get done in a week and every goal you have for the fall. So it's housework, job. I want to take up tennis. I want to start journaling, take care of my kids, book group, whatever you have, dump it all down on these cards. Then you take the cards and you put them in 3 groups: low priority, medium priority, high priority. And what your goal is to make 10 cards. That's the only 10 things you're going to do for the next however long you decide to give this a try for, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And you create a pyramid where the top card is going to be where your time and energy is most spent. And then there are 2 cards under that. And for most people who work, it's going to be some combination of family and job and maybe some other goal you're trying to meet. Maybe it's a physical goal. Maybe it's, golfing or something. And then so 1 card, 2 cards, 3 cards, 4 cards. You're going to pick 10 cards. I would very much recommend making sure that some of them have pleasure, some have accomplishments, some have connections, and some have movement. And then you're going to play with the cards. What does it feel like if your job is at the top? What's it feel like if yoga's at the top? You can play with it until you come up with this set that you're going to dedicate. So if you've got your cards and you decide, I want to try to write a book, and that's got to be in my 3rd level. So you're going to have to give up some stuff. You're going to have to get a housekeeper or a nanny. You're going to have to, or change your expectations so your house doesn't look pretty for 6 months. You've got to do something that's realistic because we all have a certain number of hours and that's all we can do. But by creating intention in the fall, you get not only the sort of routine and ritual that comes with this time of year of getting back into putting our houses in order, getting back into what we want the holidays to look and feel like, but you create a roadmap for yourself so that it doesn't feel like, oh my God, where did the summer go? Oh my God, where did that time go? I was so busy. I don't even remember fall. This is how you switch it so you take control of your life as opposed to your life kind of running you. And it's just amazing. I used to be somebody who made beds and made the house look nice. And when I decided I wanted to start a podcast, I did a podcast for a couple of years called Fix Yourself. And I literally had my coach said, you have to give those up. So I just did. And I don't know that I'll ever go back. I mean, sometimes I kind of get in that I want some feeling of control or the space to look right. But so that's one of the activities I always do. And I will tell you that a way to make it easier and even more meaningful is to do some values work first. So this puts this exercise on steroids where every goal we have in our lives should be attached to a value. So I have a huge value in giving back, in helping people. So my value for helping is what then created my goal of becoming a psychologist. And then I behaved in ways that got me a degree. And now I work, and it's very aligned. It's congruent. And the areas of our life that are congruent are very empowering. So they're also great because when you start to feel like, I don't want to do the podcast this week, I'm really tired. You can go, okay, but that was your value was to give back and reach a broader audience and people who can't afford psychotherapy. So, and then I go, oh, okay. And it'll kind of remotivate you, but having values that the goals come from, because if you have a value of health, like I'm sure you do, so many women, so many people do. If you have a value of health and you're training for a 10K and you hurt your knee, you get derailed from the goal, but not the value. So then you go, okay, well, maybe I'll get a personal trainer and he'll help me stay in shape while my knee heals. Right. So values work is really important. And the fall is a really good time to look at your values and think, do the values I had in my 30s still serve me? Do I want to maybe change something? Do I want to become this person who's more of a mentor, since as a woman, now I'm reaching that age of wisdom but anyway, so I play with some of those. I also loved the ritual of, never do spring cleaning. It's kind of like New Year's being in January. I think spring cleaning is so ridiculous. March is like your kids are home. The craziest part of the year is coming. Like summer's why? But in the fall, I not only like to make my spaces calm for the holidays and kind of get organized, but I also like to symbolically spring clean. Like, are the shows I'm watching really serving me? Is the music if you're watching, like one time I noticed I was watching a lot of crime and thrill, horror stuff. And I'd go to bed kind of with my heart pounding. And so I decided to kind of clean up what I allow into my visual space and my ears and all of that. So, but fall's a really good time to do that, because if you do, I just became an empty nester too, by the way, which I love. But
I love the fall because people always talk about the new year, right? And this new year, new you. I don't want a new me. I like me, right? Like there's gonna be no new me. This is it. This is it, people. So I love it. I do like the fall because you're going into the holidays. You have the stress of the holidays. So if you're organizing your house and sort of organizing your life, you are taking control of the controllables, right? And that leads to happiness because you're calm and you're confident and you've got control. And when things in your life come and like you said, take you out, like your value is, or you want to be out exercising, and then you hurt your knee. Well, there's other ways to pivot, and you then have the control. The knee isn't, you being hurt isn't taking over. right? You're not taken out because of that. And I think that's important. We are living in this very stressful time, the global pandemic. The Delta variant, we're vaccinated, we're not vaccinated. The kids still wearing masks. I'm wearing a mask everywhere I go, even though I'm vaccinated.
Me too.
The political climate is very, it's a very divisive climate. How do you stay happy? And how do you stay out of sort of this doomsday scrolling, falling into these rabbit holes of doomsday?
Yeah, doom scrolling is such like that. I'm sure will be added to the dictionary.
Is that a real thing? Doom scrolling?
Doom scrolling, yeah. I feel like on Twitter that's doom scrolling. So I think that's such a good question, and like there's no way to not be alarmed and worried, and yet, I do think that as we do need to be really conscientious that social media and network news are geared now to keep us watching more. They're not just to inform us. And so their job is to create a negative space in our brains. They tap into our fear brain. Mm-hmm. And so I love this question because it's huge. It's not just about how do we in this moment in time, but in all moments of time, whether it was World War II or the Vietnam War, now we've got this climate change. It's always something though, right, that we could focus on because our brains have what are called ANTs, automatic negative thoughts. And it's really this wonderful part of our brain that just wants us to be safe. It doesn't care if you have fun. It doesn't care if you're successful. It does not give a shit if you're happy. This part of your brain would rather you sit at home than go to the party. If you have social anxiety, it'll say, oh, don't do that. Mm-hmm. Do not do that. You're going to make a fool of yourself. Stay home, get a blanket. And these automatic negative thoughts, they're just from our old brains. And our society has changed so much that they don't work anymore because we're not worried. It used to be like, if your brain was saying, don't do it, it's probably because it was dark and you lived outside and it was a bad thing. And now we have to just go, hey, great. I see you. I'm going to go to the party instead because I don't want to live in fear and negativity. So number one, set boundaries with all of social media and the news. Turn it off. I totally recommend reading your news from a paper you like. That's a good paper. I'll leave it at that. And give yourself a time. So 30 minutes in the morning, scroll your news while drinking your coffee and then be done. And maybe your social media, you need to get rid of all the people who are alarmists and have positive messaging and nice recipes and beautiful whatever you want to see and leave it at that.
That's great.
That is the best way to not get taken down. Now, another piece of the literature, I'm so glad you asked about this, on happiness that could not be clearer is that if you practice gratitude, you will live a happier life. It's kind of like mindfulness. If you can be present and not distracted, you'll be happier if you can live in gratitude. So how do we do that? It's really hard because if you're like me and you put a little journal by your bed and you wrote 3 things down a night, it didn't do anything for me. I literally was like, okay, again, I'm grateful for my health. My kids are healthy. Like, great. Didn't do anything. So I'm very type A. I'm less so now. I will say I've calmed down in the last several years, but my friends used to call me A+, just to give you a hint. So I thought I'm going to really test the boundaries of gratitude, and I'm going to do a gratitude study with myself as trying to, so I decided to practice interactive gratitude. So instead of writing a journal, I decided to give other people my gratitude. And so I wrote a gratitude letter to somebody every day for 100 days. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. One night it's like 11 o'clock at night and I was like, oh, I forgot getting up. I did it though. And I have never been so profoundly affected by anything in my life ever. It was the means for bypassing that negative brain, because during the day I'd be driving around and I'd be thinking about like, who am I going to write today? I think I'll write that person. And I wanted to go deep and make it real. And so I would tell people really specific things that they have brought to my life. And I wrote old mentors and bosses and teachers. I wrote authors who impacted me. I wrote every friend I'd ever had. And so about 2 weeks in, people started to write me back. So then it started giving back to me. And then
connectivity.
Some of my friends started to do it because it was so meaningful to them to receive it. So it had this ripple effect that was insane. I really understood that like metaphor of a butterfly flaps its wings, like, is there a tsunami? Like it. So I really, in whatever way you can figure out gratitude in your life, whether the journal's enough for you, but when you're looking for the good instead of worrying about the bad, it's just dramatic.
That's great. And what a great way to reconnect with a lot of people in your life.
Oh my gosh. Bosses wrote me back. They're like, I can't believe you remember that thing I said to you. And it helped my memory. And it was really interesting because you start thinking specifically, what did that person say that impacted me? And it was like a trip down. It was amazing.
I love it. So last question for you this evening. At this stage in our life, women are reaching this age of wisdom in their 40s and beyond. And part of that wisdom is recognizing our power.
Yes.
How do you help women feel empowered?
Oh, this might be a little controversial with some people. So, well, the first way I'll say helps with both empowerment and self-esteem. So remember when I talked about values and kind of the congruency. So living a congruent life is empowering. I'll just use the health example again. If you value health and you're a couch potato and you eat poorly because you're stressed out and you don't have time to work out, you will not feel great. Because if you value health and you don't behave in a way that meets that value, you're disappointed, you don't feel good. It kind of sucks that space out of you. If you value health and you eat pretty well most of the time and you get movement when you can and it feels really good, you're congruent. It's empowering. And so by going through those stages of examining your values and living with goals and behaviors that are congruent, it's super empowering. The other thing that has been a pet peeve of mine forever is victim mentality. And what I mean by that is not real victims. If you've been through trauma, I'm a trauma therapist. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you're a normal adult human being and you are blaming someone else in your life for your problems. You are a victim. I also want to have this caveat that I realize that this generally could sound so white privilegey, and I don't want it to. This can apply to everybody's life, but I know there are absolute limits to what some people in society can do and be empowered, right? It's just a culture that's not fair in a lot of ways. But here's an example I like to use. I work with a lot of couples, and like one person in the couple, stereotypically the female, will not like how clean the house is. A lot of therapists will work with the people to negotiate. And, the guy's like, I don't see it. I don't care. I don't have time. I'd rather be out having fun. I don't care if the bathroom is clean on Saturday morning. And so there's this fight about who's right, what's wrong. But I came to a place in my own life where I decided if something bothers me, I'm going to fix it. So my husband leaves stuff on our kitchen counter. I hate it. I love a kitchen counter that looks beautiful. It was a pet peeve of mine. I tell him, get your stuff off the kitchen counter. He likes the stuff on the kitchen counter because he doesn't forget about it. So I just created a system. I moved all the stuff. I created a basket for this, a basket for that. I told him where it was. And when he puts his stuff down, I just swoop it. And I took ownership. I'm the one who wanted a clean thing. He didn't. So by fixing the problem, it's empowering. The last thing I'll say, and I really, I just lost my train of thought. I thought you went frozen for a second.
No, that's just me smiling.
No. I think for a second.
And my Botox.
No. But I just think that space where women say they're lucky, if I could tell women one thing, it would be never say you're lucky.
Yes.
And you might be lucky in your life, but a lot of women think they're lucky and they downplay what they've done to get where they are. You're not lucky that you're a badass at this company.
Correct.
You worked your whole life.
Correct. I do that all the time, and people stop me because I do often feel like, oh, I've had a lot of luck along the way. And anytime I say that, people say, stop saying that. You are not lucky. You worked your ass off. Yeah. You sacrificed, you did.
You might have a lot of wonderful things and be enjoying your life. Right. And the lucky feels like the word, but it's like, I've worked hard and earned this thing and I'm so enjoying it.
Enjoy it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I do think it takes away the enjoyment. It takes away, not the full enjoyment, but it takes away that ownership of it, that you made it happen.
Well, I had like this aha moment where my whole life, a lot of people in my family struggle with weight, and I've always been real fit. And I was in New York City seeing shows. I love New York, and running in Central Park in the morning one morning. And I literally stopped and I was like, everybody always says you're so lucky that you don't struggle with weight. I was just like, F you. I'm running in the park. Everybody's sleeping in, and I love it. And I choose to do this, but it has nothing to do with luck.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
you are making it happen, and you are making
own your life,
your own happiness happen.
Right. Women, we're so amazed. Like we show up in so many ways that we're the center of the home, and we're our children's everything. And we show up at work for people, and we should own that power and own that wisdom, and, get really clear and intentional. And it just leads, my life looks a lot like it used to from the outside. It's totally different for me on the inside.
Mm-hmm. I think we hear a lot of women say at this time of their life, they're just happier. I love it. And it is a wonderful time in life. And I'm glad that companies like Womaness are recognizing this time in women's life. So I thank you.
I just want to thank you guys for creating a company that like is for women who are past what Hollywood says is our prime, and it's still like, you matter. I love all your products. It's such a great thing that you went, why is there not more? Right. And thank God, I hope it's the beginning of a huge movement.
Well, it's fun, and it's great to work with people that you enjoy. So I'm sorry, I was about to say it. I'm lucky for that, but you know what? I made that happen.
You got it.
So thank you very much for joining me this evening on Taking Questions. Tonight, I was talking with Dr. Shannon Connery, a happiness expert. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a good night.